Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、お帰りなさい。今日は154日目です。Is day 154? Today is the day before our second second peak day. And our second peak day is going to have a lot of things. Like, look at all those things. Has it always been this much? I wonder how many vocabulary words we're going to have. That's a lot of characters. So tomorrow is going to be a fairly busy day. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Okay. Yep. So, brace, I suppose. Brace. Typically, the second peak day is distributed to the level up, right? So the more I do here tomorrow, the less the volume is going to be for the level up day. Generally, level up days are double stacks. They are stacks of whatever is left over. So in this case, there are only 5 characters left over. And those end up stacking with whatever is unlocked on level 16. So this level up was kinda normal, like the previous levels, but this tomorrow is gonna be pretty big. We'll see how the vibe goes. But that also means the day before level up day is like nothing. So today we have 5 reviews. However, yesterday was triple stacking. So we got a lot of things. Yeah, there it is from yesterday. We got a lot of things to go over before we do it. Okay, so an opportunity to reinforce. So see if I can come up something else suits my fancy. So we had Bakasu, right? Bakasu. So Bakasu. We got the change into what? A sheep. Ba. That's what we have here. And Kasu doesn't really flow with his, so we're going with, we're gonna cuss someone out to trick them into anger, like a compromise situation, right? To trick someone into anger. And the meaning is to trick. So there's that. And then the next one was wow. I really don't take liberty of my space, huh? On that one. What? So osowaru, right? Osowaru. Oops. Osowaru. And osowaru, not so we have teach, right? However, this wa, in my opinion, I typically think of wa and whatnot. We're thinking in the opposite direction, so we're gonna think other direction. And that is to learn something. Or learn from something from someone. And for teach, this then pivots to take an opportunity, right? We have oshi. So oshieru for teaching. Also infamous for now. Saru. Saru. And I'm gonna interpret this off of Chinese. To go. And to go, like, I got to go, right? I got to go. Leave. It does blend with the mnemonic. Like, if you see someone running at you with a saw, then you gotta leave quickly. That's kind of the somewhat of the mnemonic for that. So to leave. Next one was a kanji. Cho. That's to investigate. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with this. Other than we're gonna tie it to, or it's investigate. I'm gonna tie it to investigate. So to investigate. This is a pretty loose one. To investigate, which is not cho. It's... Oh, I actually made a mistake on this yesterday. I think I said shito I'm using shitoberi, shitoberi as a Chinese linker. So I'm thinking strawberry, which comes off as shitoberi. Shitoberi. And because of shitoberi, it's actually kind of what it reminds me of is the essence of shitoberi. It's actually shira. But the mnemonic works pretty well too. Like she loves someone else, so shira. So why are you investigating? You're investigating someone who loves someone else, right? So shira is shiraberu. Is actually the to investigate. So a little bit misnomer. I wrote shito because I think of shidoberi. Not the greatest, but you gotta work with what you got until it sits. Next one was temporary. Temporary is kind of not great right now. I don't know if it's vertical or horizontal first. Karini, right? Karini. Oops. So Karini, this is what is temporary in a matter-of-fact way, like temporarily is supposing. Or assuming, or something that you're thinking temporarily, right? Was just supposing, and that's really all I got. This character does have an element of that in many other contexts. So or other words. So I think that's okay. And then the most disappointing of yesterday was probably this. Omowazu, right? Omowazu. Disappointing in the sense that things that dealing with omo comes up a lot. They kind of vary quite a bit. The idea of thought, think, intent. Oftentimes intent and thinking and things that you're thinking about have either intention and or figurative, like it can be figurative and literal a lot of times. And this stuff, I do dedicate quite a little bit of attention to this because thinking, intent, unintentional, that type of thing is very nuanced in my opinion, in terms of language a lot of times. And I do quite, for lack of a better word, think about it. In this case, we're doing the wa again. So for me, so it's the other direction. So if you're not thinking about something or intending something, it's unintentional. Or unintentionally. That's what we're relying on. So those are the ones. There were like 3 others, but they're more on the weaker side. Either explained by the idea that they're unique in the pool of WaniKani stuff, and or they are relatively new. So not to give them the opportunity to repeat. All right. That's it for the stuff that we picked up in over 340, I think it was like 340 reviews. It feels like it was the current level 15 and maybe like level 13 and then like level 11 or something. Unfortunately there's no breakdown of those things, kind of like Hanzahiro, where there's apparently there were summary pages before, and I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but it hasn't returned, and there's lots of people who have adjusted it. So I might add a summary page to it, to this workflow, in order for me to see visibly myself where the groups. It gives me an idea of how long it's right. I do not have any aspect of how long it's been. Now you can trust the SRS system to account for that. So like what works under the hood stays under the hood, and you don't have to actually look under the hood. But for myself, I'm not necessarily here to try like just go in a blind eye. I kind of like to know how things are working as well. Actually, that's one of my main reasons to even consider using SRS or a website or something, is the idea of understanding how things work, not necessarily what the results are. The results are going to really work out most of the time because I invest most of the time on how it works. Like, you can learn by the best method without actually ever understanding how the method actually works. You can learn and know a lot of statistics, which has happened in the last couple of days. You can blurt out a bunch of statistics and conclusions and results to present a case without actually understanding, without requiring to know what the methodology was involved. And oftentimes when I present a challenge to the process of those comments, like what is the functionality or the application of those products, like your motivations would be one for creativity, right? When you're creating a piece of work, one of the process to understand the creator is understanding their motivations, how their backgrounds feed into their creation. And yesterday, I think I got my answer when it comes to interacting with people who approaches me with a product or like their stuff that they want feedback on, and I realized that yeah, I don't typically commit to individuals who can't even explain their motivations and their creative intent behind their products. I like to know that. That is actually part of business transactions. Transparency is something that I value quite a lot. However, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be working with someone who is capable of transparency. Like, what I mean by that is informative transparency. So some people could be very transparent and say, well, I don't know, I'm just winging it, it's random. That's being transparent too, it's being genuine, right? However, for myself, out of professional courtesy, I like to make it very clear that I typically, unless there's other coincidences that come about that ends up tying the relationship, business transactions are required that I have a very clear understanding or impression that the person I'm speaking to know what they intend to do, be able to express it on the account that when I say something or review something, I'm also held accountable for what I say based on the other person's product, right? So in my opinion, that allows me consistency in not becoming associated with potentially non-professional and or other consequence or unforeseen consequence. It's not that it's going to eliminate or completely prevent something from happening. It's to mitigate and increase the rate of success in terms of investment. So I invest in people, not like, if someone's very successful, it doesn't matter if I invest in them or not. If someone's going to become successful, it doesn't matter if I invest in them or not. They're going to become successful, right? If they know, they do it. So the privilege is mine to use, but I haven't often been in a position in which something about my influence can propel someone else's success, except for a very particular circumstance. And that's the circumstance that I spend most of my time doing. As in, someone who maybe has lifestyle management problems or having decision-making problems or quality of life problems, or they feel they have those problems. And then I kind of see it maybe through an interaction with them. Is how I choose how to invest in people without them asking for it. Like, to me, I can see that I can be helpful indirectly by, I don't know, indirectly doing things and suggesting things, leveling up motivation and whatnot. Those are things that I can see that if I invest in time, there's a likelihood that I can make a positive or like a functional impact on someone. But when someone approaches me with a creative product, I have not that much input or specialty in a creative product. I barely publish any written things. The only thing I've ever published in my life were scientific. So when someone asks me for feedback for creative input or, I don't know, their hobby, I need to know more about the person. And when someone says, hey, would you review my thing, right? For me, at minimum, that requires a vision. And if it's not a vision, a requirement of describing what the process is. As in, you can vibe code if you want it, but if you don't understand what the pros and cons of that vibe coding, I don't see how much of my feedback can be helpful. And that's maybe an excuse for myself, but I prefer that when someone asks me, oh, do you need, I can make things for you. Do you need, like, do you want anything that I can make? I'm like, well, may I ask, why are you asking me? Right? So how did you get here? Did you intend that? What is it about me that made it your target to suggest something? I want to know, because entering a business transaction, however small, however trivial, can lead to longer business transactions. I think I think we had someone had a hot debate with me about the cost risk benefits of always taking the forward investment on someone at the opportunity or chances of an extended relationship, right? I think that's the balance of professionalism. Oh, I think it was like the East and West culture thing where um, there's a proper decorum expected, largely because professionalism um, can very well be easier for sure or harder when it comes to the complexity of the nature. Professional relationships may not necessarily be the same as intimate relations. Oh, that was like the parental relationship with the professional relationship. However, professional relationships can be temporary if you so choose, or an everlasting opportunity through the rest of your career. So I try at most to not leave trails of body and rejected offers, or rejected opportunities. So it's probably why I don't collaborate wholeheartedly. I attempted to be a little bit loose about collaborations and whatnot, and that's largely because I think the standard model nowadays is that business transactions are made by people who often are unable to communicate what their intents are and how they are mutually invested in each other. So, relationships, however short or long, are predicated on that success, in my opinion, on that upfront thing. If we're just chatting about things and it's often a one-way exchange and or some sort of you're wrong, I'm right situation, then even though I may continue to try to invest in it, realistically, I don't see that type of relationship to last more than a year, if not less than a year, if not less than an hour. And sure enough, the last conversation I had yesterday lasted like 30 minutes because I as much as I like investing in people who are very motivated and outgoing and they're usually younger, those are times, especially younger people, are times in which they favor short relationships and they look at things in the short term oftentimes. So their communication style and their ability to talk and interact with another person is often for the short term. And short term is nice, but I treat it like nice, like that, unless they convince me otherwise. But I typically try to go for the long term. And it is a gigantic red flag when your first interaction with someone that might provide feedback, or you're suggesting you target someone that might make your career, someone that jumpstarts your career. The first thing you do is not try to gaslight them. Like, hey, my product is really cool. Like, I just started. It's like, oh, I'm not that. Like the whole time, yesterday's comment was, it could be a possible language barrier. That's how it's related to language. or a cultural barrier. But generally speaking, when you want to establish a relationship with someone, especially one that you're asking for feedback, the first thing you think about when you're communicating is not relying on the idea that you keep telling the person whatever they say is not what you think. So don't ask for feedback. Like, despite not even reading the product, if an individual starts talking back to the person you're asking for feedback, I doubt the intent was to get feedback. Because what would they look for? If you say that I don't agree with this point of view, it's like, well, actually, you're wrong. Like, then why start with the feedback in the first place? And that's usually youth a lot of times, in my opinion, in experience. And it's an element of professional relationships. When you're in a professional relationship with someone else, like for creative product and development, it requires mutual understanding that there are different perspectives. Unless you want to surround yourself with individuals who only agree with you, then go for it. I'm not one of those people. I typically am not. If I do end up agreeing with you, oftentimes that is a form of coincidence. Coincidence in the sake of I happen to have the same opinion you do. And oftentimes that involves having to deal with the idea or the prospect that when you ask for feedback, you're ready to consider the idea that maybe this is not what I thought. Otherwise, hire employees. Start a business, become your own boss. You're not looking for feedback. You're looking to have other people work under you. And it was pretty wild when I offered a life anecdote and someone could so comfortably say, well, actually, you're wrong. I'm like, well, actually, none of my feedback matters then. Because if you can actually tell me how I live my life and what I think about my life events, then you're not looking for feedback. You're looking for minions. You're looking for shills. People that tell you what you want to hear every day. And being a boss can help with that, right? Employees operate under you. Of course, that is still not how incredibly successful entrepreneurs manage things. They actually manage by creating working professional relationships with their employees, and that leads to long employee retention. So even then, someone who continuously project their own opinion despite being trivial, not understanding what their product is going to be, have no clear indication that they understand who they're talking to, would be any more successful if they were able to be open-minded, because there's no clear vision. That's kind of like asking an investor, I have a product, I have a beginning, I sort of have the end of the idea, but I have nothing else completed. And then the investor would be like, okay, so there's no product here, really. I can't see the product. So if you want my time and investment, can you explain to me what you think the product was going to be? Can you explain a little bit about yourself? What is it that makes me want to invest my time in you? And this sounds all business and political like, but professionalism allows interactions between strangers to be more consistent until it is not a stranger-stranger interaction. Sometimes when you exercise proper decorum, this affects Japanese and Chinese culture. Things are initiated consistently between strangers, not even necessarily professionally. That is more accepted as Eastern culture decorum, as in what are strangers can become friends, but there are set things that I'm talking about. The things that I'm talking about are actually the typical steps, or with some loose context clues, are actually the typical steps in order to maintain high chances of leading to longer relationships. So it's more like they're different parts of making possible relationships. I think the internet has kind of eroded that to a great extent, because you no longer have to figure out what other people's opinions are or their motivation. It just is what it is. So when it's kind of ironic, because the person that I spoke to last time said they are well versed in internet culture. The irony is I actually believe them, but not necessarily well versed in the sense of experienced in internet culture. They are well versed in how to behave in the internet culture, as in telling people what's right and wrong, and telling people what they should and should not say to them, and ignoring and leaving whenever they think that will promote some sort of behavioral response that they desire. Right? If you leave one person and you leave another 100 people because you don't like what they have to say to you in a critical manner, then at some point that will be the social norm. And then they could accept the idea that no one's going to ever like their piece of work. That's kind of one of those pits of despair that can happen, right? Yeah, and that's kind of where I enter the picture a lot of times. Well, how do you climb out from that or get a different perspective? You ask someone who tries to stay open-minded, regardless if you disagree with them or not, to balance it. Something like that. Anyways, I thought I'd share a little bit of anecdote from yesterday. It certainly is telling. High school student, and very internet cultured for sure, because we clearly came from different countries, different cultural backgrounds, and I would say the internet is the great equalizer. You state a bunch of facts, add a bunch of different large numbers, and pass it off as wisdom. When the person that's interested is asking about you, I wasn't asking about other people. A working business relationship is between the people in the business transaction, not everyone else. So if you go around trying to educate someone while not saying anything about your own motivation, like, I don't even know who I'm in business with other than someone who can spout out details about things, like go Google it and whatnot. It's like, well, I want to know what you know. I don't want to know what the internet knows. So if you're getting me to read your stuff or asking me for stuff, I can't even trust you. Right? Like, what I'm sure this is relatable to even internet cultured people, I suppose, that if you don't know anything about the other person, you are less and less likely to trust them or be able to trust them. And that's how I keep myself safe. I don't click on links and whatnot, largely because someone said this was awesome. Like, well, I want to know who I'm talking to. I like to play video games by knowing what the developers are like, because I'm investing in long-term relationships. Parasocial relationships can be long-term. Like, you are influenced. I mentioned John Green and Hank Green. Quite often it's because I listen to their content quite often. So it would dramatically improve my consistency if I actually understood a little bit about, or be able to collect or understand a bit about their person, right? By the sheer nature, the content they put out, is an expression of themselves, not some sort of business transaction that you're trying to achieve. So I don't know if it's going to be too laborious for other people, but I certainly find it very educational when I'm constantly motivated to understand the person and not necessarily the product. The product is often an extension of the person. Now, this can get a little bit hairy because oftentimes when people attack the product, they might not understand the person. The person is the source of the product. So that can be a little hairy. You know, some people make the thing where it goes the other way around too, where, oh, this product sucks, so the person's personality must suck too. That's not really the case, right? Go to the source, right? Often the source is far more explicit or informative than an extension of the product. It's kind of like a language. Let's tie it back to language. A language attempts to capture what the person is trying to express. It is composed of as many details and nuances as possible to capture what the person's expressing. So if you look at the language and you realize that there are things that it cannot communicate, then it kind of gives you an idea that the most things you can gather is the source of the communication, which is the person, and language is one of the avenues. Nonverbal communication is another one. What is not said but seen as well, what is heard, what is created as well, are extensions of the person, but not the entirety of the person. And it's incredibly telling when you say you want to go and write something for other people and you can't even explain what you're writing to another person. That's why am I a little bit critical about that nowadays? I can't tell you how many times now when someone says, oh, this is my work, and it turns out to be AI generated. And what I mean by that is, how do I know it's AI generated? I don't know for sure that it's AI generated in the terms of looking at it. Like I didn't like study, oh, this is AI, this pattern that indicates it. No, I asked the person, can you describe your work? Like, tell me something that the product can't tell me. That is ownership of your work. So when someone goes and say, talks to me in like, for language, for example, if someone talks to me in a certain way and I read their work and there's no indication that that's how they view things, I'm like, are you sure this is your work? That's one of the telltale signs of a teacher, like a high school teacher, reading something and like, I don't believe you wrote this. And then the students say, I definitely wrote it. Prove it. Tell me what you have written in the work, or at least paraphrase it to an extent that will reflect the work. And for me, yesterday, when I was talking to this person, I'm not even entirely sure if whatever they placed on that paper wasn't plagiarized and or AI generated, because they were unable to explain what they have already written. That's kind of funny because you might be thinking, oh, but that's AI, it's new technology, and that has been done before, and this problem haven't existed. No, it have existed even prior to the internet or the AI. It's called plagiarism. Oftentimes, blatant plagiarism has the same red flags as the communication style. Now, hear me out. I still give the benefit of the doubt to the person. So I give them chances. I ask them, what are you inspired by? Like, what are the things? Because oftentimes articulation is sidelined by the enrichment for typographical or visual expression. So if you can't, they might be far more elegant in typing as opposed to speech, or maybe their dialogue conversational skills is not as great as their compositional skills, right? So instead I ask questions to ascertain if these things are true, and that's what working relationships are. How do you get steady successful rates of professionalism and adequate business relationships with each other? You become, quote unquote, a better judge of character. But that's not judging in the form of presumptions and or stereotypes and discrimination. It's judgment of character in a way that it can create amicable relationships between the people, right? You use that judge of character in order to validate if your judge of character is accurate, right? So it's very often brought up that miscommunication can happen when you're learning a target language. But miscommunication is not the result. It does not end or result in a determined outcome. It's how you resolve them, or how you're able to judge if there is potential to overcome these problems and misunderstandings or limitations. When someone comes up and if you're gonna blatantly say you're wrong, then I'm out. That's step one. Like, front door, you enter the door and said like you're wrong, I'm gonna leave. That's like bare minimum communication. Bare minimum. If you think that going to a stranger and asking for their feedback and you start by you're wrong, I would say that's like communication 101. How to not screw it up in the first 10 minutes. Saying the person you're asking for an opinion is wrong. And that's a great way to demonstrate maturity and professionalism in communication. I mean, the other person might say, well, I call it as I sees it. And I'm like, okay, continue to do that. One day you'll find someone who believes that you're right, and then they'll be your person. But I'm not one of them. So also understand the consequences of your behavior. It doesn't make people upset if they understand what their consequences of their behavior are, right? One, if you go around and say, I always speak my mind, and understand that when you always speak your mind, lots of people who think when you speak your mind are disagreeable will leave. So if you're unable to speak your mind in a way that is not direct and obtrusive, then you might increase your potential feedback, and you gauge that until you want. I mean, you can go around and say you care less about anybody else's feedback. Know that then most people won't give you feedback. That those are the consequences of your actions. So when this person just dipped in the middle of a conversation, then I hope they find someone. But I can honestly guarantee that it's going to be some growing pains to understand that feedback does not favor or is productive to someone who doesn't even listen to other people. And that to me is a life lesson that one, at least I try not to outgrow. But it's kind of interesting that I've met people who think you can, one would naturally outgrow those lessons. And we'll see. I mean, self-importance is great. Asking for feedback is not, is very antagonistic to self-importance. You're asking for feedback. That means someone else has something to offer that you don't otherwise know, right? Yeah. pretty interesting. It's what happened yesterday. So at the end, I kind of spent like 2 or 3 hours doing that, something like that. I think language learning, what I describe is easily, I would say easily, I don't like the word, it's very likely to be the skill or the situation one will encounter when learning a target language, and then using that target language, and then having to start over in the process of introducing that target language into their lifestyle. So how do I get my friends to be normal when I speak or talk about something that I want to be part of my life? I try to invite them by expressing our common interest, not telling them what to do or telling them what is important, right? And then if you want to make a new friend or someone who belongs to a culture that uses professionalism and decorum, I don't even call it professionalism, it's formal decorum, like Japanese, for example. In Chinese, there's formal decorum, like manners, rules. So you're going around and saying, well, I don't have a lot of friends who speak this language, but what about your current friends? It's like, well, they don't really care about it. So how do you go about expressing your interest while inviting to other people's interest, right? You want a target language to be part of your life, but it won't necessarily be sustainable in the long run if you do not have the communication skills to make it possible to have it to be part of your life. Otherwise, it goes back to something I said yesterday as well. Self-speech, speaking to yourself, finding opportunities to speak about your target language and interest as though you're sharing your interests with other people. So instead of talking about video games, you talk about your target language. That gives opportunities to use your target language. So I try to talk about Japanese in the context of most things that other people are interested in, like this very moment. I'm talking about an anecdote about communication because I love communication. In fact, in the same evening yesterday, I had to make commentary on the idea of emotional quotient and intelligence quotient. And despite I have my opinions on intelligent quotient and emotional quotient and lots of questions, I like to entertain the idea that there are opportunities to use that understanding or whatever they were interested in as a way to further discussion. Or you could just say, well, that's garbage, and you end the discussion, and that's perfectly fine. But if someone comes up to me and say, like, they pop in and say, dude, WaniKani is garbage, it's like you end the discussion. That's great. I hope that makes you feel better. I don't know why you did it. Were you here to have someone say, yeah, right, I agree with you? I would not, in my opinion, be willing to talk to someone or even invest in anything this person says when they lack so much awareness, especially emotional awareness, when making comments like that. And that will be fine by them as long as they know they got the job done, they got their dopamine, and they left. But oftentimes, some people may try to instead invest in that type of person. And my first thought is, I would not be surprised in another 10 or 15 years you're cynical about people's investments. When someone can make a hyperbolic, emotionally obtuse comment, they are unlikely to correlate with behavior that promotes long and trusting relationships. That is the compromise you make. So when someone goes around and say, I don't get it, everyone always cheats on me, and even though I'm such a lovable person, It already explains itself. The first thing they talked about was not the nature of the cheating or their contributions and the other person's contributions to the cheating. They talked about how they do not have faults, nor do they see a fault. That is the common denominator in all of the comments they make. So, in my opinion, sometimes your behavior may be dissonant with the consequence of your behavior, and that leads to a lifetime of dissonance and possible self-delusion. I am not delusional in the sense that I cannot provide feedback to a person who doesn't even listen to me in the first place. I could try. I could certainly try and gaslight that person to thinking that my opinion and my feedback is important, but I'm realistic enough to know that if I do that, I would also not be sure if that person was genuinely taking my advice or I'm forcing my advice on them, at least in my opinion. And I would be doing the same thing they're doing. Basically, they ask for feedback and they'll only listen to the feedback that they agree with, not the feedback that they want to hear. So if someone says like, I think before you start writing, you have to know what you're writing. So until you know what you're writing, my feedback is that know what you're trying to write. Otherwise, write it before talking to me. Because I don't typically trust nor believe that someone has the commitment or the discipline necessary to understand what they're creating if they can't even express it without creating it or creating it in the first place. That would be my feedback, even before reading anything. Like, I don't have to read anything if someone can't even explain what they're writing. So that would be my feedback, and then that person would say, well, I don't agree with you. And that would be it. I think that's the most likely outcome in that situation. Instead, I asked them a bunch of questions and then they ended up disagreeing with me and then they left. And it's like, that sounds about right. That sounds like someone who will likely struggle with creating things from feedback. They might still create wonderful things, but not with feedback because they're not asking for feedback. I think what they're really looking for was affirmation. They wanted someone to say, wow, this is a really neat idea. That's great. It's very interesting. And that's what they were looking for. That type of feedback. And you can probably find it by paying someone. I think the most guaranteed way to get good feedback is to pay someone. Not necessarily guaranteed. It's usually fairly okay. What does that sound like? A sponsorship. You know, incentives. You incentivize someone to review your product. There's a reason why I don't get sponsored, nor do I pander to people. But at the same time, I'm ever grateful if there was an opportunity for that. But I also want to know who I'm working with or for, right? In that case, when it comes to sponsorships. And then I talked about the more obvious thing. Hire people, hire employees. They will give you feedback that is incentivized. That might be a situation for an overbearing boss or a boss that has control and micromanages their entire business. That is possible. That is the pragmatic way of operating something that has minimal contact with open feedback. For a video game designer, or an indie developer, like someone who's starting up, they don't have that luxury. So when you go around and ask for feedback, you don't have the luxury of being arrogant and closed-minded and the resources to get people to think what you want them to think. So that is one of the biggest, in my opinion, ironies when it comes to people starting their business online. They think that going up to a stranger, at least in my opinion, it probably works. I don't actually have any data to suggest this. I'm not starting a business. In fact, I probably would start a business by establishing the infrastructure of my employees and the vision. I would get all that sorted out, the foundations of what my business represents prior to trying to sell a product without any of those things. In this day and age, I think the vast majority of young people who think they can make it quick without being in a professional field is you vibe along and you hope it works out. And I think it does. It actually does work out. The question is, how will that impact your business by the time you are successful? Where there's a will, there's a way, for sure. For me, it's often increase in cynicism, right? Because you'll quickly learn what not to do or what isn't good for you, and you will eliminate those. And then your odds of success as a professional, or maybe soon to be professional person, goes down. The odds of avenues of success begin smaller and smaller. But the focus on that aspect, that success will go up probably. The opportunity for that very narrower scope will go up. And once you get a successful business, then you expand, right? And then all those problems come back. So how do you expand when you focused on narrowing your source? Q AAA titles. Q an indie developer becoming a AAA business. You finite, you form a core, and then now you slowly tiptoe and expand out again. So then you're juggling all the wider audience stuff. Sole proprietors going about that is an interesting way to go about it. I can tell you now that maybe once a month, some artists, some self-made artists, not necessarily like the artist that we're talking about that has a much more experience and professional background. We're talking about someone who wants to become an artist. They go around, they say something that is incredibly irrelevant and detached from their potential customer, and then they suddenly pivot to, hey, I made art. Do you want anything? It's like, okay, but you didn't explain to me anything about if you know what I want. Like, well, it looks like you might need art because you're a Twitch streamer. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. Why would I buy artwork from someone who clearly knows nothing about me? What are the chances that you will have a vision or an ability or even the commitment if you can't even bother to understand the nature of the person you're making art for, right? Like, how do you satisfy a customer if that customer has no indication that you know anything about them? I actually did that in yesterday's interaction. I asked them, so how did you select the person to offer intellectual feedback? And then they're like, oh no, I just selected at random. Okay, so then how do you know if you're selecting at random that the person is intellectual? And they say like, oh, that's just something random. I didn't really mean it like that. Maybe I worded it differently. It's like, so you selected someone randomly. Like, how am I random? Like, there's such thing as above average and below average. I'm a below average Twitch streamer, as in I don't cater or pander to a larger audience. So it's actually not random, in my opinion. The odds of somehow going to the bottom of the stack in the study category is not random. Twitch is non-random. There's no surprise me and you clicked on the first thing you saw in the front page. If you click on something you saw randomly in the front page, it's not me. It's not random. That's experience. Like, I've been streaming for over 6 years. I know what's random and what's not random. I mean, okay, say somehow they did randomly come across this stream. They would be able to explain how they got to my stream, which was completely pivoted away or avoided. So there's no understanding whatsoever that you know. And hear me out. This stuff that I'm talking about is not important to anyone. It varies if this stuff is important to any other Twitch streamer and whatnot, right? And you have to understand that, right? Or you can spin the wheel of luck and randomly pick your Twitch streamer. There are going to be Twitch streamers, which is how they're going to behave. It's like, this Twitch streamer is too deep or too particular for me. I'm going to leave now. It's like, yeah, when you leave quickly, you have more chances, right? So that person is going to go and spam and continue, and hopefully their effort and their commitment reflects their low success rate. I prefer to increase my success rate in order to get consistency at the cost of having to try many, many more times. So there are different approaches and behaviors appropriate for that. If your success rate is low, you can still be successful by upping your attempt rate. So if you tried 1,000 times and your success rate is 10%, right? You're going to get 10 buyers. If my success rate is 30%, like 10, like if my success rate is 100%, right? For example, I'm using like numbers that are convenient. If my success rate is 100%, which is never the case, and I tried once, that means I have 1 customer, right? But I had to try 10 customers to get 10 customers. So if someone tried 1,000 times and their success rate is 10, then they have 10 customers too. And the time it takes for the 1,000 tries may end up being the same amount of time I spend for those 10 customers. A better example would be like 9%. Say I have 90% success rate. The other person has 9% success rate. In order to find 9 customers, right? That person has to try 100 times, and I have to try 10 times. And the amount of time we both try could be the same because they spend less time trying with each customer, and I try longer amount of times with each customer because I only have 10 customers to interact with. So the question you ask yourself then is, how often and how willing are you to invest? For me, I prefer that the person I'm talking to is the person who doesn't like trying many times and also put it all on the table up front. And I do the same. And then if you don't like it, that's great, because then you don't have to worry about what happens down the line when they decide that's the end of the relationship, right? And that's not popular for the internet. The internet, there's a lot of people, you consume a lot of products. You can use WaniKani for 3 months and like, I have enough. Let's go move on to the next excellent product, right? Or the next big thing. Yeah. Thought I bring in a story to embellish the WaniKani session a little bit. And I think language is very similar. How does this relate to language? I invest in a language. I actually sometimes I don't even vibe the language before liking the language. I know that if I invest time in a language, I will like it because I spend a lot of time invested in the language. If you're having the mindset where the more time you invest in a language, the more it feels unrewarding and lacking, probably the 9% person, not the 90% person. The longer you invest in something, the more and more it's irreplaceable to me. So that other person talked exactly, they didn't deviate from my profile of the person. They talked about being weeb, being labeled a weeb. And oftentimes when weeb, the word weeb is being like a English speaking Japanese culture interest groups, they used it in a derogatory way, or they affirm that is only used in a derogatory way, in the way that they're describing people who only loosely know things. Like they don't want to be classified as a weeb because they only have their toes dipped in a little bit of things. Well, then stop acting like one. And then from my perspective, what I see when someone talks about a weeb is someone who started liking something and now they're obsessed with it. So regardless of what people call them, they will love it. And that is a different type of use of that term. It has become an identity. And this person spent time saying, oh, it's just cringe people who like things a lot. I don't think someone who thinks that it's cringe to like things a lot should be writing books and not listening to feedback, in my opinion. So I'm going really connecting the dots of behavior. If you think you're going to become a game developer who spends more time saying, I'm going to make the things I want and I don't really care about what other people think about, and you think that being a weeb is cringy, I think there is a lot of cognitive dissonance in the future for this person. And I don't want to be part of that cognitive dissonance. Because it takes a lot of passion to follow through on something while still ignoring everyone else's feedback. Like Kojima. Kojima is incredibly unapologetically Kojima because he follows through. He's incredibly passionate about his things, and people can resonate with that. He embraces, but at the same time, he follows through on criticism. He actually prefers to be criticized. So he's unapologetically, sorry, this is a little related to a funny little, apparently a funny little interview comment or a tweet that Kojima made recently, because Death Stranding 2 is about to come out. Definitely a game I'm going to be watching to watch in like English or Japanese or what have you, to interact. Kojima was disappointed that there were less criticisms when he was doing playtesting for Death Stranding 2. And that, to me, is a boss statement. He likes to be challenged, and he's unapologetically challenging. So he's like, he raises the up to the occasion. But for me, I think that's how I would know if someone is professionally experienced or not. The balance of knowing you can still follow through on your passion things, but also welcome all the challenges to it, because you don't become defensive all of a sudden and your resolve crumbles because someone tells you, hey, the word that you think it means this, it actually means this and used differently in another context. Instead, you become defensive and you try to gaslight the other person, like, I don't think you know what you're talking about because I don't believe you that happened. I'm like, it literally happens. on a daily basis. Like, so if you don't trust me, then I don't have to give you any feedback because you're not going to trust the feedback. It's not a cherry picking moment. So it's one of those, what's a really great example related to language learning? Someone comes up to you and say, "Oh, you know, this tool is trash. You should use this. You should use this tool. Trust me." I'm like, I can't trust you. Everything you said literally just said you understand nothing about me. If that's how you interact with most people, I hope that the people close to you understand that. Because as far as I know, I'm not surprised that no one listens to you. If you feel like no one listens to you. Or as well as if you feel like you have to say these startling things and negative things in order to catch the attention of someone. If I do something weird and subtle, my friends will notice. It's built on nuance. If your friends are often built on extreme behavior, then that can be very telling. If your friends always cheat on you, that can be telling. Those are some of the things, right? The reason why I brought up Kojima is because it's incredibly refreshing to have someone that, like, yeah, it's kind of nice that people like this, but Kojima has a behavior where he wants to do something that is incredibly discomforting, maybe, or novel. And Death Stranding 2 is following up Death Stranding 1. And there's this like comfort, right? Like, oh, we kind of know what to expect from Death Stranding. By the way, I haven't played Death Stranding 1. I only watched Death Stranding 1 playthroughs. And it's going to be the same for Death Stranding 2. But the cool thing about him is that maybe once Death Stranding 2 comes out, he's going to go and make another game, like a different IP, because he likes the idea that feedback is part of the process, and doing new things and different things, it draws criticism and feedback, natural curiosity. So it's super poetic that whenever you think about people who make things out of nowhere and become incredibly influential are also people who are incredibly open to expecting criticism, expecting feedback, expecting pushback, or like times of adoption. And then we talk about Night Rain, which is what topic me and my younger friends have been talking about, where then you have the other type where you don't take feedback at first and continue to stay stagnant and reinforcing and affirming the things you iterate on. And then the moment you have to do something new, then there's criticism, and criticism leads to a maturity of new ideas or something like that. At least I think that's what's going to happen to Night Rain from FromSoft, right? Interesting. I think language learning goes a long way to taking these lessons. I think for me, this entire digression here is how I approach language learning. I approach language learning in that way. So that person that stopped by and said that Duolingo is garbage, I want to ask them, why do you think that's garbage? How is it garbage? Let me know. Can you explain all these things? Because if you can, I might be able to address them because I have thought about them. Or if I haven't thought about them, I'll consider them. It's not an argument for or substitute for trusting you about whatever you want me to do. Your feedback creates that trust. Your investment creates that trust. So if you're bailing out the first moment, if you're bailing out on me the first moment, you're like, oh yeah, you see that's the problem with Duolingo constantly, or oh, I can't sit here and collect or invest or share moments, then yeah, you have no commitments, right? You're not committed to staying here. It's perfectly all right. Know that I'm also not committed to interacting with you outside of these sessions. So if you're not interested in WaniKani, but you have constructive criticism, that's great. Make them known. Express them. Exercise, I don't know, emotional intelligence, I suppose. Personally, when you want to be friends, and you think that you can be friends with people unemotionally, that's a professional relationship. So I use the word professional relationship and intimate relationship as a way to somewhat provide some categorical separation between what people kind of think they want most of the time and what people really actually want when they're describing it. So when someone says something like, yeah, everyone's greedy, you're looking for professional relationships. Or, no, sorry, you're looking for intimate relationships. But you treat everyone and you talk about people like they're professional relationships. Like as a professional, like when you're thinking about professional relationships, a business. Well, yes, people are greedy. They want to make money. It's a professional relationship. There's no emotional baggage behind being greedy. You make money. That's the purpose. But when you think that being greedy is something new and something unexpected and shouldn't be in relationships, you're looking for intimate relationships. Relationships that are built on emotional trust and respect and morals. So you can have a blend of that. Not all business relationships do not have some element of intimate relationship, like building loyalty customer brands. Oftentimes, businesses actually take financial hits to do that because it's not pragmatic. So when someone says something like, oh yeah, I only can interact with you when your Japanese is good enough. Professional relationship. Come back when I'm actually good enough to have the privilege of your company, because my Japanese now is actually useful to you. Business transaction, professional relationship. And I'm okay with that. Voice that. Oh, I can't stand watching you stream because you keep making the same mistakes I have made. So I will try not to interact with you anymore. It's like, okay, that's fine. There's no hard feelings. You literally stated something that is true right now. So I'll wait patiently until it's not true, right? Or maybe it stays true. Then we just stay professional. There's no hard feelings. When you say you're wrong, you're looking for emotional confirmation. That's not professional. Like, there's nothing professional about projecting your opinions onto someone. Like, like if you're talking about fact checking, that's fine. That's fine, right? But I was expressing an opinion, so that's kind of one of those dissonances. Language, it is very interesting, the context, the contextual differences of what people are looking for or how they're communicating it when you're learning a language versus expressing what you like. But I think the parallelisms are fairly obvious, or at least obvious to me to some great extent. I try to limit my ability or my investment in people who don't believe in long-term investments, especially in people. However, I treat them as professional transactions, right? I'm not telling you that I'm invested emotionally. I do not invest emotionally in people who treat relationships and whatnot as business transactions. So if I don't like this game, therefore you can't be my friend, that's a business transaction, not a intimate one, right? So when you go around, and I'm offering some clarity from my perspective, when someone says, yeah, you don't have friends that do any of these things, I like to think that if they are friends of intimate quality, personal relationships, you're able to possibly get them interested by expressing your interest, because they're around habitually, not tied to a business transaction. And that's probably where I'll leave it. I'm curious, what type of friend and family profile do you have? My friends have no, like, they're not here. They don't actually know what I have been doing for the last year and a half. They might know, like, tangentially, and it doesn't affect our trust in each other or our interests when it's needed, right? Those are my personal friends that I have. And then I have an astronomically or disproportionately more professional friends. And they can go on and off, last for a while, and there's rarely any emotional attachment to them. So I think the internet, especially Twitch, has made it a social norm to, in order to be successful in this line of work, successful, I don't know, I'll put it in quotations, whatever that may be for the other person, know that it's built nearly exclusively, or disproportionately so, over 90% of it is understanding how professional relationships work. It protects you, it makes you exacting, it creates safeguards and somewhat of a cutthroat and discipline necessary to know how to interact with someone in the least amount of time without the most investment of emotional baggage. Now, those who try to upfront invest in emotional baggage will end up kind of like me, where I chose to do that because I'm not running a business. As in, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 0, or I'm talking to no one. I'm talking to myself, right? What is the most intimate relationship you can have in anyone's mortal life? The relationship with yourself. If there's anything that does not need communication, like if you were to rank how well you can be emotionally intelligent, the odds are, if I had to wager, the most intimate relationship you can have is with yourself when compared to any other alternatives, like another person, another friend, another family. They're outside you. So when it comes to that, people who favor intimate relationships and personal relationships with other people and everybody they meet often do not scale well to online content and content creation, because that requires professionalism. It requires a discipline between sort of adding some of you in an intimate way, like emotionally, and most are professional. So the decorum that is expected. So when this person left, like they said a sentence and then contradicted me and then just left, that's a professional transaction. At least I like to think that other person also expected that. I think the first thing that I asked was basically going down the rabbit hole. It was fairly obvious. It's like, oh, I just chose people at random. It's like, did you now? Is there any way you can convince me or explain to me how you did it by random? I think in the era of the internet culture, which this person claimed to be well versed in the internet culture, you understand that most things are not random on the internet. If you're well versed in the internet culture, one of the first things, in my opinion, at least top 10 of people's awareness or execution of self-awareness, is that you don't do things randomly. Right? You picked studying material. You picked the studying section. You picked someone that's below average, underrepresented, and you picked someone that doesn't appear randomly anywhere, and even then, the front page of Twitch is not random. That's what makes Twitch efficient. The closest thing you can get to random is maybe going on Google and say, I feel lucky. Clicking on I feel lucky for some randomness. When you go on YouTube, the front page, that's not random. It's simply not random. YouTube lately have injected some randomness into it, but they're still targeted. So, at least minimally, I would like to know that people understand what they're doing, their actions, and the consequences that they have. Otherwise, I want to inform people that. So if you're not aware that your actions are likely not random while on Twitch or on YouTube, I like to offer my grain of salt and challenge the notion that you make random decisions online nowadays. There are still ways to do that, but even trying to do that is an act of discipline and not an act of randomness. Randomness is minimized on the internet now. In 2025, the 2025 landscape of the internet, I think nearly 99% of your actions are not random. They are decided, whether you know or not. That's what creates consistency in your choice. So hopefully, that aspiring kid isn't not randomly picking people that will likely not suit that person's purpose. If you choose someone who has very few viewers, who's starting up, who is very young, naive enough to believe that your product is worth reviewing and investing, that, in my opinion, is likely not going to provide appropriate feedback for this person. To do things like make Steins Gate a reality, or make Undertale a reality, I would be very, very surprised if I sit down and have a chat with Toby Fox and he said something like, oh yeah, you know, I randomly picked something on the bottom of this algorithm driven website in order to get all of my best ideas. I don't think that's how that works. Not in the least bit. I don't think a Barone of Stardew Valley did the same thing. Like all the things that people are talking about where they're referring, because I asked about this person's interests and they mentioned like Steins Gate and whatnot. I don't think those people did that. You can prove me wrong by doing it and being successful. We'll know. We'll know in 5 or 10 years or however long this person has to do to create the product and prove me wrong. And I would be behind you. If you prove me wrong, then I'll be talking about you. I'll be talking about this person, because the chances are I will probably play the game and be astonished by this person's story. But for now, I spend a lot of time playing video games, following video games, following like learning material and whatnot because I'm understanding the people and the behavior behind the people. So if that is not proper feedback, or the feedback that I'm most comfortable in giving, and you don't want to listen to it, I got nothing more to offer. So it was very appropriate that that person left at that moment. There was not much feedback I can offer. I would probably say something about their first chapter of their book, and they probably go off and do whatever, right? It's interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. I think one of the things, one other thing to offer like cognitive dissonance, right? Gate check, is how artists target people who may not have the resources to pay them in the first place. So if you're saying you randomly target people, right, for your art, spamming people at the bottom of a stream list is not random. It's opportunistic. Opportunism is not random. Kind of like building a business model to target the people who are most likely going to spend money on your product. That's opportunistic. You're deliberately picking something that you are more likely to be successful at. When you're targeting randomness, like the irony here, this is about the order matters. If you're doing something random, like if you're targeting something random, as in you're not putting a lot of thought into it, right? You didn't have a person in mind, and you go on the internet and you click on something. That's not random either, because downstream of it, someone else have already decided who you're going to bump into more often, right? Like, you're like, oh, you know, I don't have anybody in mind or the type in mind. Let's just go on YouTube and click on the first thing that shows up. It's not random. YouTube decided what you are going to see. So, like, if you start an account with no history and you're like, I'm going to advertise to whatever YouTube shows me, it's probably Mr. Beast. So then you try to avoid that. So what do? You go to Twitch, you scroll all the way down to people who have 0 viewers and 1 viewers, and you're like, okay, this is a random person. Let's pick this person to see if they want to pay for something when they don't even have viewership and stuff to pay for it in the first place. Now, I'm not describing my position. Now I'm thinking about statistics. What are the likelihood that the people who are at the bottom, who hope to make this a side gig or something, are going to be people who are going to willingly invest in a random stranger to make stuff? How do you convince them it's possible, right? For example, I'm an artist. I want to start off something. So I need to get better at understanding what people want for Twitch emotes or something like that. So the first thing I would do is I don't take a random approach. I understand, how do I get more skills? How do I start gaining experience and build a portfolio on my emotes? So I need something. I need a workflow, actual experience, creating a history of ways to do something that improves my skill. I go to the bottom of Twitch. I'm saying this theoretically because I have no plans to start a business, but this is more like professional experience being translated into starting a business. I would go to the bottom. There is a demand, but the demand is not that I profit off of them. When I think of people at the bottom, right, 1 viewers and 2 viewers, their normal behavioral interaction is that they full stop 100% invest in any 1 viewer or 2 viewers or 2 viewers. They try their hardest to retain that one viewer. So they have more relational aspects of trying to have long-term professional relationships with them. So my first thing is you have to invest forward. So if an artist, I need experience, I need actual clients who have things that I have, that I've made, that shows that I am very good, and I need time and projects to work on them and proper feedback to understand what is important. I go to the bottom of Twitch, look at all the streamers, and I don't randomly pick. I pick all the bottom streamers and I tell them, hey, can you give, would you be interested in free emotes? Let me explain. There's no catch to this. I need to build my reputation. I need experience as well. So this is the first time that I'm going to be making emotes for a streamer. I need to be able to get ideas from the streamer and build a portfolio of actual experiences. Would you be willing to tell me and give me some of your ideas for emotes, and I can make them and they're yours free of charge, right? And if they're very satisfactory and you get a lot of success off of them, think of me. Like, please feel free to like attribute me if you want. It's up to you, free of charge. And in the future, if you become successful and my emotes are being used, you know where to find me. You can come back and help me out with like asking for more emotes, or maybe throw some cash my way, or even notoriety. And then you move on to the next streamer. You do the same. What that means is you're willing to invest in the relationship that this person will be internally grateful for. You're creating a whole list of people you have invested in, expecting that some of them will follow you in the long term if in fact they are successful as well. If I was a musician, most of those musicians do that now. That's how they start up. They try to invest in the long game towards where there is demand, but you approach it from the behavior that is illustrated or characteristic of those people. So next time, in my opinion, what is a great way to know that you have someone who is inexperienced, who have yet to become a professional, who understands emotional intelligence is necessary to create a strong business, to start up a strong business, is see how they go about investing in a relationship. Once you become big, you know, you have lots of clientele and people want your attention and whatnot, then you become more, then you need to make tough professional decisions of a different nature. You no longer have time for all that. So then you are allowed to act like an arrogant, like self-centered person. But I don't think that comes with age. Or like, I mean, I don't think that circumvents the unfortunate nature of age. When one is young, they don't necessarily, you're not expected to have that experience yet. So if there's anything I can impart, and I'm not a business owner, by the way, I am someone who tries to encourage students to be invested in their education and their career. That's what I wanted to do for a living. So if there's anything that's a long game, is being a teacher, helping your students recognize that they can make anything work when they put their mind to it. And then maybe 30 years, maybe before you die, 30 years down the line, you see these students become superstars and they somehow decide to mention your name because maybe you did something that changed the course of their life. And that is the long game. So where does all this come from? Is that I feel very comfortable. I think if there's anything that I'm very potentially skilled at, is doing just this. Right here, talking to myself, maybe the occasional person who will watch this. When you start up, it requires very different understanding of how to create a foundation professionally and personally prior to engaging in a more expansive, like larger scale stuff. And in my opinion, sometimes a lot of people end up spending so long in expanded decision making that you get missteps that hopefully humbles them and allows them to reconnect from where it started. Duolingo. I haven't talked about this yet, and no one has brought it up to me yet, but Duolingo's recent misstep. I think I've been someone who historically have mentioned Louis Van Daan's interviews for a while now, but recently that illustrates that humble beginnings require due diligence to stay connected with who they're talking to or who they're operating. Publishers of video games. Actually, I would probably even place WaniKani under the same category. WaniKani scaled up. They've become complacent, right? Adequately so, pragmatically so, until there's proper resistance in order to give them a wake-up call to engage once again with the development of their product. But Tofugu and WaniKani has, since in the last 2 years, largely been on rails. And for better or for worse, I'm catching up with that, right? I see what most people are talking about in the long run. So this applies to WaniKani. It doesn't necessarily apply to Hanzahiro, although I haven't seen an update in a month, and that's breaking behavioral patterns for the developer. So that's kind of a thing. I'm a bit invested in WaniKani and Hanzahiro, given that I spent a lot of time, right? And you notice these things, at least in the developer's behavior. You don't have to literally need interviews with them, but I would like to ask, right? I genuinely believe that the original founders of Tofugu and WaniKani has lost touch with their original mission. But that's not because it's a bad or a good thing. It's because life and being human creates that. And those who are entering WaniKani have different perspectives because they haven't had those experiences. One thing that can very much circumvent all of the things that I've talked about is, for lack of a better word, proper communication, right? Communication, expression, and how does that wrap all of this up? Learning another language can help you revisit a lot of things about your native language and or the process of communication that you otherwise have become complacent about. And streaming language learning has most definitely accentuated that property and has offered me a lot of opportunities, even maybe a little too much so, opportunities for me to talk an hour and a half on a 15-minute lesson about of me just learning new words or reviewing words in Japanese to talk about what is it that I am doing right now. Why do I choose to stream and illustrate and capture language learning? It's really a platform to understand and highlight what are you going to do with the language when you learn it, or when you try to learn it. What is the function of it in your life? Like life skills, which one of them is communication, emotional intelligence, a business. Operating a business is a life skill because your career is part of your life. I think a lot of times people think of careers as an ends to a means to an end. That's fair enough. We may differ on that. But for me, this is life. This will be part of my life for the foreseeable future. Twitch is part of my life, the foreseeable future. I'm held accountable. Well, actually, maybe not so much Twitch, but all of this stuff is going on YouTube. I'm held accountable for everything I say now. At least I treat it as though I'm held accountable for most things. So I'd like to hope and wish luck to everyone else that possibly interacts with me, or maybe not, or don't care, or will cross paths in the near future. Most of this type of monologuing is either for myself or for anyone who wants to hear our perspective that is a little bit different, right? For now, it's a little bit different. Maybe it's going to be the social norm in the future. But yeah, doing things randomly on the internet, I would love to hear a cogent way someone could explain to me that the internet is random to them, or how they either not randomly counter the internet's algorithms, or that somehow the algorithms lead them to random inspirations. Like, okay, hit me up. I like someone to explain that in a very cogent way that allows me to understand and redefine my understanding of behavioral conditioning online. Because I do feel that the things you spend time with, the things you pay for, a large majority of much of the things you do online are because they are optimized for behavior, not the other way around, right? The hyper optimization of life is the ultimate post-internet trend. And what I mean by post-internet, post-introduction of the internet, kind of like post-rock. Rock was there. What comes after rock music? The post-internet era is about hyper optimization, and optimization is non-random. Non-random is what makes things optimized. So much like most things, when things are incredibly optimized to do certain things, they don't do the other thing, and all that comes with it. So personal relationships, out the window. Knowing how to form friendships, out the window. And the friendships, by what I mean is, people often think of friendships as personal relationships, and then business partners and acquaintances as professional relationships. So internet emphasizes the necessity of diminishing emotional attachment to things in order to be successful and consistent interacting online. So when someone talks to me like I'm just a number and I'm just random, I'm less and less likely to trust them. And that is a normalized behavior of what I understand the internet does, which is not random. So then I try to look for their motivations. If their motivations tell me that we have collectively a common interest and not a lot of conflicts of interest, then I invest, right? It is less and less likely that it would be unsuccessful. But I have yet to invest in anything more than a professional relationship with anyone. And I've had a couple already, and I hope to see them again in another 3 or 4 years when they release a new video game and write another book or something, but strictly professional. Strictly professional. I've made 2 friends along the way, so that's kind of nice. Other than that, yeah. Several thousands of people later, And, 7 years and several thousands of people later, and I know who my friends are, like my personal relationships are, and I know what my personal from my professional relationships, and they will know, and I hope that I do everything possible to make them successful. Right. Anyways, let's go and do our 5 review for the day. All right. Sorry for the rant, but it's healthy. I want to voice my transparency whenever I'm doing this kind of thing. All right, so what are the lucky 5? Oh boy. Is this the weird one? I think this is the weird one. As one pleases. Right? Am I a pep? Nope. Oh wait. What? Oh wait. Oh, whoops. Hold up. No. Okay. Oh. Oh, wait. No, we're skipping this. We're skipping this for now.
Sentai.
Sentai. Okay, that's feels a little better.
Tasukaru.
Tasukaru. Ooh. No, it's not that, right? It's to exchange.
変える
Kaeru.
試験
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, buddy. All right. I got you, right? I got you. I think I need to definitely review the win kanji. I am not winning. I'm losing very, very hard on the win kanji. Yesterday, I think I struggled. So we have like ka for the kun, and then we have sho for win, for the onyomi. But what are all the weird ones for win? Think of them. Is se one of them? Is yo one of them? Okay, the right hand one, right? We have sha. Sha is the onyomi. But yes, sha is the onyomi. And I think that's all I have. I don't remember a kun. So then it's like shosha, which that's kind of weird, right? Then you would have something like this.
勝者
Oh, what? What did I type the first time? Okay, I have no idea what I typed for the first time. Oh. Oh, wait. Oh, or is this just winner? Oh, it's not as one pleases, it's winner. What is as one pleases? It's something like winning. It deals with winning. That's my mistake. It happens every once in a while. I think I typed something and I didn't actually type the thing that I thought. Oh, it's kate. Yeah, so it's using te instead of sha. Sha often can be used for someone, and te can often use for someone. So is shu. Shu can be for someone, and then there's hon. Oh no, not hon. Ha. Ha, like a house. Ja, ja, for professional stuff. So, but as one pleases, so it's using the hand. Okay, that's fine. I don't understand what I did. What did I type the first time? This happens. This happens. I don't pay attention to what I'm typing. So I need to work on that. Anyways, yeah, there you have it. Tomorrow is going to be a fantastic day of lots of learning. Let's review the stuff for tomorrow. Okay. Monix. Again. Courage. Whatever that is. Kidding. Paragraph. Paragraph. Pass. Walk. Height. Grass. And scarecrow. Era. Iwa. Kae. Haru. Iru. Ha. Aki. Retsu. Ku. Saka. Oh boy. Oh boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Dang it, ritual. We're gonna come back to it. Shin. Ki. An. Shi. Fu. Fu. Saku. Doku. Gi. Na. Uh. Uh. Okay, we're gonna skip that for now. Jutsu. Ki. E. Gun. An. Hara. Utsu. Ban. Neko. Alright. Yeah, it's been tough for it's definitely have been tough for this unit for the character reads. Ritual. What is the okay, what about shallow? Yeah, I just don't know without reviews. Vocabulary is coming in red hot though. It will help out quite a bit. Shiki. Shiki. This one. And aloe. Asahi. So asa. So what are we missing? It was asa and shiki. 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 Shiki is. Gotta make sure. Okay. Yeah, this one needs help. Vocab to the rescue. Vocabulary is to the rescue for these guys. It's definitely a lot tougher. Alright folks, that's a wrap for WaniKani today. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu. Of course, the lesson took what, 3 minutes, and then the review, like the stuff in the beginning, like 15 minutes, and then we talked about a bunch of things, or I thought I shared a few things, not necessarily to fill time, but it's involved in what the experience that I've had while doing this, so they're all relevant to that. Yeah. Asahi and Shiki. Alright, as always, feel free to follow along or watch on double speed or skip around, you know, follow along if you're interested in WaniKani. If you have a lot of experience in WaniKani or other experiences with language learning, on and off sharing with other people. I like to think of a romantic idea in the future, language learning, because you can, to share with others, become a platform or an incentive to work on communication skills, or to make communication skills much more dynamic and emotionally intelligent than it is currently at. Perhaps, who knows, that would be cool to be something I build a model or a community around. I don't know if I'm onto something. I generally don't think of things in that long term. So excuse me for suggesting that other people require a vision and the future. Often that is required in business, you know, in professional relationships or establishing professional relationships. And for me, I haven't really thought about it, but it would be really, really awesome if someone else normalizes that diffusion of responsibility, right? I would certainly be joining that group and to promote the aspect of language learning that also promotes revisiting learning how to communicate with other people. And ultimately, learning a target language dramatically increases the likelihood, in my opinion, of needing to talk to someone else, needing to interact with another person or people of different cultures. And that's ringing my bell. I'm definitely very biased to engaging in things that bring people together or even make people argue or discuss about things. That's what brought me to video games, by the way. So I like anime, video games, teaching, science, because it involves humans, human interaction. And I'm gonna toss my feather in the hat, and my tiny little feather in the pool, that yeah, I'm pushing back on automation and conveniences that continue to rip the soul out of otherwise hopefully human interactions online. I think it's a vastly overcompensation of hyper-optimization, and hyper-optimization has prevented or circumvented the need for human interaction. It's legitimately, people are growing up nowadays thinking that that is optional, or like some sort of skill that's based in human communication is optional, superfluous. Even the word fake was thrown around a little bit, right? So perhaps if you have a lot of experience with language learning and sharing and championing and encouraging language learning in target language, feel free to stop on by every once in a while, 3 or 4 months, every so often, share some anecdotes, some stories, some learning experiences, and possible emotional innovations on how to encourage communication and talking with other people. I believe in my organized, chaotic world, most of the stuff that I'm saying now, anecdotally speaking, experiences and whatnot, actually pre-selects and or encourages those who may not be interested, that they themselves may have the capacity to pick up a target language and get used to communicating all over again. I actually think one of the greatest incentives to learning another target language is taking up the challenge to improve or practice again or refine your existing communication skills. That is the goated end game for me. You can learn 14 languages and just continue to bootstrap through languages and still fail at communication, in my opinion. So go for the goal. If I wanted a downstream goal, I like to think that the process of learning a target language incentivizes to appreciate how powerful it is nowadays, possibly in demand, and possibly a future trend in elevating people, or maybe being in demand of people who can communicate. We'll see in another 10 years or so, when I'm like about to kick the bucket or drop dead, that I will witness a new resurgence that pushes back on hyper optimization on the internet, that basically diminishes and mitigates any form of human interaction. I think this is the trend that we see now, and I would challenge intellectuals or people who are interested in having human relations and whatnot, or psychologists and whatnot alike, to say otherwise, that hyperoptimization, AI, and whatnot is somehow bolstering human interaction online. If so, I would love to hear it. Or perhaps if you're someone who dabbles in this, I would love to exchange some conversations and discussion topics. So you're more than welcome. I fill the time in with or without another person, which is kind of ironically the result of AI and algorithms. People tend to not have a lot of people to interact with these days in a meaningful, soulful, human, candid interaction. So hopefully everyone has a great friend, loving families, someone maybe to even share internet and consume internet content with. Because I think that makes life worth living. At least one of the couple things that make life worth living. Until then, to all the people who enjoy Japanese, only interested in Japanese, minasan, mata ne. I'm gonna get up, take a quick bathroom break, and I'll be back for Hansa Hero. Thank you.